You're listening to Innovate 5, the show that highlights innovation and celebrates the passion for the future. Innovate 5, the power of STEAM. Join Carl Wolfenden as he has conversations with amazing innovators from around the world. The guests and topics on the show are not always affiliated with Innovate 5, and any comments are the opinions of the individuals, and we strongly advise before making any decisions to research the options available.
Good morning, and welcome to Business Class News. And this show, of course, is Innovate 5, where we've been talking over the past, few weeks about various topics which are close to my heart and are close to what we've been trying to achieve on Business Class News. And we've been having some conversation around disruptive and provoking topics as such. And of course, we've had over the past couple of months now, we had a regular contributor, which is Michael Steiner, who is the executive director of Best Robotics, and he's going to be joining me today. And last week we actually had a conversation around communication, and my goodness, that blew up. The conversation that went around it was really rich, and that's what we want. That's what we want. When we started Business Class News about 7 years ago, the whole idea of this was to have conversations, things that maybe people are not always able to listen into, etc., or really get involved with, and showcase these conversations and have them. They have the opportunity for them to dive in and either explore or whatever. And that's what happened last week. I mean, my goodness, we had an explosion on LinkedIn about communication, and so I started thinking about communication, and I mentioned, off mic to Michael. I said, I think creativity is part of communication, and he said, yes, I think we need to have a conversation about that. I said, well, I want to have somebody that that can add to that conversation, and without hesitation, he actually sort of said, well, I've got to introduce you to Shlomo Maital. And he's the co-author of Cracking the Creativity Code. What a fabulous read. And without any more hesitation, I'll bring the two guests on. Michael and Shlomo, thank you for joining me this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Good to be here again, Carl.
Absolutely. You're just, it's the Michael and Carl show. I mean, it really is. And now it's the Michael, Shlomo, and Carl show. So I love this. One of the things, just very quickly, Shlomo, fantastic book. I love this book, and I love the way that you've outlined it, and you take somebody through a journey, and you look at a subject, and then you break it out, and so it really opened my mind about what creativity is. And a couple of weeks ago, we sort of outlined the thoughts on creativity, and in your book there seems to be a decrease. I think this could be a little bit sort of controversial, but there's a decrease in creativity in students, but an increase in IQ. You talk about that. What do you mean by that, Shlomo?
So first, a quick comment about the book, Carl. I'm only a co-author. When I decided to write a book on creativity, I'm just a professor. I deal with words, and I sit in an office. I figured I need somebody who actually had ideas and who actually made them happen. So I rounded up one of my former students, and we wrote the book together. And he has credentials. He is highly creative. He started the biggest ad agency in Israel, changed the world. So the book has some credibility with a real creative person. The definition of creativity is ideas that are novel, of course, but useful. To be useful, you have to implement them. And so many people have great ideas and nothing happens. So, Carl, about this decline in creativity and rise in IQ, there's something called the Flynn effect. Scholar called Flynn checked some data and did some studies. He found that IQ, measured IQ by the same test, rises by 10 points every generation. IQ is rising. And there are lots of reasons for that. We're getting good at learning old stuff. In terms of creativity, I have a graph in the book, and it's in front of me now, and it disturbs me every time I look at it. There's a standard test of creativity called the Torrance test. And they applied this test to kids who were 5, 10, 15, and then adults who were 30. 5-year-olds, Carl, and I'm sure you know this and agree with this, and you too, Michael. We all have kids. 5-year-olds are genius creative people because everything is possible. 98% of 5-year-olds score genius level creativity. When they're 10 years old, 1/3 are genius level because they go to school and they learn what's not possible. And at age 15, 10%, 1 in 10. And I don't even want to tell you what happens at age 30 after we've been in the work world. So, Carl, we are destroying this valuable resource, and probably it's happening in our schools, and it's disturbing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when I was reading the book and I saw that graph, etc. One of the things that I realized was that we're putting sort of barriers in front of people. We're saying, you can. I mean, you're right. The younger that you are, you have this. Okay, I'm going to be able to do anything I want to be, type of thing. But then you start to put rules into place, which rules are not bad. I mean, we've got to say that. But at the same time, if you try and put somebody in a vacuum of, oh, this is how we're going to teach you, and this is what this is the outcome that we want, you're gonna snuff that's, as you say, that creativity spark out. Michael, you must see that, sometimes within your organization when new kids come in, and what do they feel when they see how you just release them?
So I truly appreciate that Shlomo started with that, which is the reality test, if you want. So the reality isn't so, on one hand, simple. It isn't, on one hand, optimistic. It's important to realize that there's something going on which isn't so rosy, if you want, because this explains why on the other side, we have to put a mountain of disruption to do what I call awaken the sleeping beauty. I thought of the metaphor for creativity within the young generation of the sleeping beauty. In order to get it out, I personally believe that the creativity is in every one of us, leave me aside, every one of the individual Shlomo and I and you share the planet with. But in order to get it out, to activate it, we've got to put a disruptive long list of actionables so that it would get out of this hibernation or sleepless that it is in.
Exactly,
Otherwise,
Michael.
Go ahead, Shlomo.
Exactly. And I think I can kind of capture the problem in a couple of sentences. We're all parents. We spend a lot of time teaching our kids the rules. They call it socialization. One of the definitions I love about creativity is intelligently breaking the rules. Mm-hmm. If you think about great breakthroughs, somebody is breaking a rule somewhere or other and doing the impossible. So we need to help our kids to intelligently break the rules, not randomly, but first learn the rules, but put in them this idea, hey, maybe some of these rules, maybe we can bend or break them and create value for the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to I sort of had it in my mind how this was going to flow, but as always, these conversations they develop as we go along. But I want to really sort of look at it. If students are not being encouraged to be creative, okay, so can creativity be taught? And or maybe a better question is, can it be boosted or accelerated as such? I mean, that's what I'm hearing is that we've got to teach them the framework, but like we always say, any idea has to have a baseline. It has to have a keystone that you have as your foundation. But then whatever you build above that, you should be able to allow them to just open up and sort of, build on top of that. So can you accelerate or boost creativity?
So I want Shlomo to go first, because Shlomo can give us the Da Vinci and all the research that has been done, and then I'll respond the practical.
So Michael is the authority here because he actually is doing what you mentioned, Carl, and fostering creativity. I've spent over 50 years teaching innovation in business schools and other places. And here's what I've come to decide. After 50 years, you cannot teach creativity, but you can help young people exercise their creativity muscles and practice. You can help them learn to be creativity. You can facilitate learning to be creative with action learning projects and so on. This is how young people learn. And the paradox here is, to change the world, you need to learn all the old stuff. That's why IQ is going up. You need to respect the old stuff. This is what Confucius taught. While you're learning the old stuff and respecting and even embracing and loving it, you got to say to yourself, what new ideas do I have? What can I change? What can I bring to the world that's new and different and challenge? That's a difficult thing, to love the old stuff, to learn the old stuff, and challenge every single piece of it. And I myself had real trouble doing that. I was great at learning the old stuff and zipped through college. But when I had to come up with my own ideas, God forbid.
I think the practical stuff to what Shlomo is describing is constantly, and I hope parents don't misunderstand what I'm about to say, because it's not literally, is constantly in the world of best of project-based learning, pushing them from the edge of the mountain and asking them to create a parachute while they are off the cliff. But there's no cliff, there's no parachute, and there's no mountain. We push them into so many challenges, so many projects. We don't tell them that there's a parachute. We don't tell them what the projects exactly are. We don't tell them what the solutions are. So this is like the mother and father of all ambiguities. No downloads, no clear instructions, go do it. The only real resource you have are your mates, the girls and boys that you see in the picture behind me. This is the only solution in reality you have. Ask your peers. And this awakens the beauty.
Michael, you raise a key problem. So the three of us are parents, and I think we're good parents, and we do everything possible for our kids. And so many of us parents try to protect our kids from frustration and from failure. And we don't do them a service when that happens, because creativity involves, as you say, leaping off the cliff, taking chances, failing, screwing up, and after that, bouncing back, being resilient. And so many kids never experience and do everything possible not to fail. We teach them in school, failure is a terrible thing. We're handicapping them for life, which is trying things and failing and getting up and trying again until you succeed.
I think one of the things sorry, Mike, I just wanted to say this because I love the fact that I've got two subject matter experts that in this field that I'm having to listen to and learn from, which is fantastic. But one of the things that I want to throw out there is that we see in this IQ raise, we're seeing creativity sort of squashed, etc. But you just said, that the idea of this is to, for the students to understand that there are traditional, and tradition is huge in my family, and I want tradition to stay there as such. But I always challenge them and say, okay, this is how we do it now, but how can I do it better? How can I change the world? What can I do better that's going to better the experience or whatever? And I think that, when you see some of these great ideas that blossom, it's somebody that, as you say, understands, where we've come from, and now they're going, yeah, but this is a problem today and it's changed, and the IQ that's gone up is okay. I know all of this data, etc. Now I've got to put it into more of a creative way of delivering a result, and that's what I'm hearing you both say.
So Carl, here's the problem. Sorry, Michael. Here's the problem. So Henry Ford built the assembly line, 1908, and since that time, after the Industrial Revolution, we pay people really well to do the same thing again and again really well. And we call that productivity. And that's worked well for a century, right? And it made us wealthy, many countries wealthy. But now we have machines who can do that. And the game has changed. And the idea is not doing the same thing again and again, but doing different things in different ways and better ways, and being creative. The school system is built for Henry Ford, doing the same thing. Our new game is coming up with new innovative ideas, because the machines will take care of the old stuff. We haven't even begun to adapt the way we teach kids and adults how to do that.
So,
Michael,
I want to take what Shlomo said earlier and what he just said in the terminologies of coding and also Henry Ford, and add another layer to it. So what the students will do, with a little bit of chutzpah, if you want, they will take the capacity of MathWorks, of Simulink, which isn't really designed for them. It's designed for the sophistication of 10, 20 years older than them. They will take this coding capacity, they will dive in, they will learn this code, they will improvise with it as if this was Mozart or Chopin or Beethoven, and they will try and rewrite it, recode it. This is what Shlomo said a few minutes ago. What we want to encourage them is not to fear from this, and what MathWorks wants them to do is to have this guts, go with it, try and try and try. And in fact, MathWorks sends trainers to coach them to try and do it. Dive deep, awaken the creativity, use the masterfulness of Simulink, and improvise with something so sophisticated.
Well, I mean, I want to go back a bit. So we've talked about creativity and then innovation and the old way of doing things as such. We've seen such an acceleration of technology, an acceleration of implementation of these ideas. So if we increased the capacity of our young students that are coming through, that acceleration will just exponentially just increase, and we will get better. And so creativity is a key piece, because that was one of my questions, but kind of rolling all this in, is creativity part of technology? And the answer is
absolutely yes.
Yes.
So the difference is that because of this age group that we are working with, once you add to it these coding of MathWorks and the sensors from TI, the kids will ask, so if I add more and more and more components, will the robot jump into the air? Will it jump and loop and start dancing in the air? So they had this naivete they want to try and see how far will it go? Will it do unimaginable things? They believe that they can go as far as anything, anywhere. And frankly, that's what we want them to do. Nobody stops them. No one ever dares to say, go and try. Just see, put as many sensors as you believe that you should, and see what the robot will do with not one sensor, 3, 5, code more. Shlomo.
So, Michael, you put your finger on a key problem, and I've struggled with this for decades. When I taught MBA students, I always began my innovation class by asking them, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how many of you are highly creative people? And score yourself 9 or 10. And these are talented managers with senior positions and a lot of experience. And very, very few hands went up. And the reason was they had been doing their job very well, well paid, doing the same thing for year after year. And they say, I once was creative, but not anymore. And this belief is a big problem, I find, because every human being is creative. We're born creative, and the creativity comes from our frontal cortex. And we all have a frontal cortex, but it's dormant because many people don't use it. So the first step is persuading people to believe, just like for the Brooklyn Nets, you have to get them to believe that they can win, or they're never going to win. How do we do that?
No, that's amazing. I mean, because one of the things that has been in my mind, because we talk about on Business Class News about building the future workforce. I mean, that's how Michael and I met, because we created this feature and we were talking about what TI was doing, etc. in the coding world. They were doing a coding contest, and in actual code, not just the creativity, cracking the creativity code, it was coding. And then out of that, Michael was introduced to me, and we were like saying, well, okay, how do organizations, because again, a lot of executives watch and listen to the show, read the website as such, but how do organizations really embrace this? Because they've got to allow creativity in the workforce as well, haven't they? They're not just squash it and as I say, put everything in a vacuum. What's the answer to that? Are organizations looking at that?
Let me take a crack at that, and then Michael perhaps will weigh in. There are two things that organizations do: discovery and delivery. Discovery is innovate with new ideas and products, and then deliver them to the customer efficiently, productively, at low cost and high quality. And there's a clash between those two, because discovery involves wild creativity very often, and delivery involves discipline. And most organizations are really good at discipline, especially big ones. And there are all kinds of rules and playbooks and so on. What about these crackpots, these people with wild ideas who don't fit in, who tell the CEO that he's totally wrong? Carl, I have students in Israel. Israelis have what Michael called chutzpah, impudence. And I have 50 years of teaching experience and consulting, and I have 25-year-olds who will stand up and tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm totally wrong. And that's a quality that many organizations can't really tolerate. So how do you combine discipline and discovery? Here's the Lockheed method very quickly. Lockheed set up something called the Skunk Works in California, and they took all the crackpots and they isolated them off there as if they were being quarantined, and they gave them hard problems, and they left them alone for a year. And then they came back and harvested the solutions. And boy, did that work well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Michael, you see some of these examples as well, don't you, all the time?
So the reason and this doesn't happen often on your show, Carl, and that's when I get teary, and this happens, and maybe that's because Shlomo is here. I do believe we see in this generation, Shlomo, the Da Vinci's, And I don't think I exaggerate. I do believe we see them. I think our responsibility and the responsibility of industry is to encourage them to come out, and excuse the analogy, to come out of the closet of the sleeping creativity. We have to do anything and everything. I want to add one more dimension, and that is the multidisciplinary. Creativity isn't going to wake up unless we do the multidisciplinary cross, because it requires it. The food of creativity is multidisciplinary. And I want to throw in the one example which I didn't mention on your shows, Carl, and that is if Aubrey Evans from Du Bois at 6th grade could demonstrate at this age talents as I have seen of the same skills that Toyota Research Institute with autonomous driving sensors is researching at 6th grade. If she can do that without background, at the first year at best, she could code, drive, and display these capacities, then I'm right. We are right to call her the next generation of the Da Vincis. The burden on us is not just to invest in Aubrey Evans, but to invest in all of them because they are there.
Michael, this is very personal. So my wife and I have 17 grandchildren and one little great-grandchild. One of our grandchildren is 8, and he is a Da Vinci, really. And I'm terribly concerned. He knows how to compose music on the computer.
Wow.
It's amazing. A lot of little kids can do that. But he is bored in school. He's bored to tears because the other kids are not quite as super smart. Sure. How in the world are we going to preserve this little Da Vinci and get him through the school system without destroying the spark that he has inside of him? How can we do that?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, I'm listening to this and that's amazing. And congratulations on the 17 grandkids. That's fantastic. And especially the grandchild that can compose music. But the thing that frightens me, okay, from let's step back a bit of everything that we've just talked about. You know, we say that, you know, creativity is being, you know, quashed. It's not being, you know, massaged. It's not being sort of exercised, etc. Once a student goes from, this is why I love what Best is doing, Best Robotics is doing, is you go from your school environment where you've been given these sort of gates, etc., and barriers. The confidence of somebody going into an organization, is that individual empowered to say, you are wrong. I want to tell you how I can see this could be better. Fit, flat, fast, you know, all of those things. Because and management isn't taught that in a lot of cases. They're taught to, here is the rules, here is where you're gonna be in. My dad was in the textile industry. I was from Manchester. Okay, I was an apprentice. Okay, when I was like 5 years old, you know, with a hammer, you know, doing things in his workshop and just playing around, etc. But I learned, and Dad always wanted me to sort of express, well, why are you doing that? Ask questions, etc. I don't know if we're in a world of we embrace questions. We run a division called XLA Solutions, which is more like incentives and how do you increase performance, etc. And CSI, customer satisfaction indexes, and all of that, and idea boxes need to be put in place. But they seem to be not as prevalent as they were 20 years ago. You know, they're not asking for the opinions of the workforce. They're saying, this is the direction we're going. We're going to put the small group together, and then they're going to work over here. But these other people that have got creative ideas are not allowed to express themselves. Is industry today not allowing creativity?
So I have a small story about that, about asking questions. You put your finger on a crucial element. How to win a Nobel Prize, Carl. Isidore Rabi was a son of Russian immigrants. He won a Nobel Prize in physics, and his discovery, nuclear magnetic resonance, is the basis of MRI machines, which today save many, many lives. And he credits his Nobel to his mother. When he came home from school in New York City, his mother didn't ask him, Izzy, what did you learn today? His mother asked him, Isidore, what good questions did you ask in school today? And he credits that with the Nobel Prize because he asked some really good, hard questions. Today in schools, when my 8-year-old is in class and asks some really tough questions, is the teacher going to embrace that or feel embarrassed because maybe the teacher doesn't know the answer?
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. And unfortunately, I think what we're doing is training our future workforce to go, I don't think I should say that. And because I don't want to ask questions, we have to encourage our students to say, challenge it, but in a respectful way. I mean, I'm not saying, and I'm sure I'll get some comments saying, oh, you're telling the students to be disrespectful. No, I'm not. I'm asking the students or somebody in a workplace to look at what is the opportunity, what am I supposed to be doing? What is my role in my job? What is my role as a human here on planet Earth? Well, okay, I've seen a problem over here. I have an idea. Can I share that? And I came up with an idea many, many years ago, and I was told I was absolutely an idiot. Okay. And I was like, okay. And guess what? 5 years later, this idea was developed by somebody else. They made millions of dollars. And I'm like, that's my idea. And how many times has somebody done that? They said, oh, I have this great idea. And then, oh, nobody will listen. Nobody will think of it. And then they put it into the compartment of, oh, that was an idiot sort of type of thing, and then go and find that somebody goes and makes $1 million from it. That is the problem I see that we need to embrace, we need to encourage, and that's the way we're going to accelerate this creativity and the technology.
So let me add on or pick up on what Shlomo said and what you just added, Carl. I think industry and also the public sector, the government as well, has accumulated in the last decade unbelievable expertise. Industry assumes that their future employees will pick up and by themselves get there. We know it isn't the case. My call to them is to build the bridge. I don't expect them to develop their own schools. It isn't a fair expectation, so that will not work as well. But they do need to build a bridge that will enable their future employees to get to the level, basically building or closing the skills gap. They need to get engaged in getting their future employees there. The same with the government. In some countries, the governments are intimately and closely engaged in preparing the next generation for industry, for future success. In other countries, without pointing a finger to anybody specific, the smile points to who am I pointing to, isn't engaged. The governments have to be engaged in securing success. It doesn't happen seamlessly.
So I've heard this is an amazing conversation. I mean, I think this is going to be voted my favorite conversation of all time. I think, well, up to now anyway, because I know we're going to have more conversations and uncover great things. But I've heard you talk about evolving systems approach. You talk about it in the book. You've mentioned it off mic, etc. And this evolving systems approach to creative thinking. So I'm intrigued around that statement, and especially around the philosophy of creating this ecosystem to study creativity. We're going to have to unfortunately go after this question because we're running out of time, and I know we're going to have you back on to expand on this. But how can creativity add value to an organization and future innovation? Let's just summarize it in that.
This is really for Michael, because Michael is doing this and I'm just talking about it. But very quickly, there's something called collective intelligence. We know there are all kinds of different IQs. A key IQ for the future for creativity is collective IQ, collective intelligence. That means when we get together in a group, Carl, like the three of us together are much smarter than the sum of our individual IQs. But that requires collaboration, communication. It requires a lot of things for being effective in a group setting. And we need to do a whole lot more of that, because all creative ideas that are implemented by groups, not by single people. But Michael's students in the robotics program, they're doing that.
So before I answer you on your question, at least in a very limited way, I want to mention something that really got me acquainted with Shlomo, and that is his worldwide work on mapping. Shlomo has done an extensive hands-on and also academic work on mapping innovation and entrepreneurialism. That is really, to my mind, a link to creativity, because once you have these tools of mapping, you know also to track creativity. These are, to my mind, chains. And so my suggestion is to have a separate conversation with Shlomo about mapping, because once you know to do that, you know also to track the other pieces of creativity and talents. Now, to answer you on your question, we have learned in BEST that although we change the program extensively, almost completely, every year, once you train the students, you awaken the capacity, you can almost let them go towards the end of their high school. And this, if you want, the sleeping beauty of creativity stays active. You don't need to leave it. You don't need to stay with them on their shoulder forever. No matter what you throw their way, this talent of creativity is always awakened and on their side. This skill is lifelong skill, which they will use for whatever need they have in their life and whatever career they choose as their pathway. You've trained it, you've awoken it, and it's their skill.
But what I think very well said, both of you. But I think what I've been learning over the past few months is that and Shlomo, you just said it, and we'd said it in previous shows that we'd done together, Michael and I, that team is really the way to go, and you've got to allow the individuals within a team to acknowledge other people's opinions, and embrace the fact that somebody has an opinion, and that is really goes back to what we were talking about of allowing people to say it's okay to say, excuse me, why are you doing that? Well, I want to go down this direction. Well, if you do this, can we not go down 3 directions and expand so those types of things. So what you're doing, Michael, in Best Robotics program is that very teaching people to respect other people's opinion. These are the future leaders of companies. These are people that will go into an organization and then expect their employees, their direct reports, to come to them and say, hey, I have a crazy idea. Can we talk about it? Yeah, let's look at it. And it's not on our roadmap. How many times have we heard that? It's not on our roadmap, but we want to see how we can fit it in. So that's what I love, what I'm hearing from both of you. Well, unfortunately, we've come up to the end of our time. I think we could have gone on for another 3-hour segment. And so we're going to have another creativity session and merge them together. So Shlomo, thank you so much for joining me. I know it's later in the day over in Israel over there, and thank you for spending the time with me.
It was a great pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
And Michael, as always, thank you for putting this this great sort of conversation together, introducing me to Shlomo there. So I appreciate you joining me and the great work that you're doing over at Best Robotics.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Shlomo. What a pleasure.
Me too, Michael. All the best.
Thank you.
Of course, that was Shlomo Mattel, and of course, Michael Steiner, who's the executive director over at Best Robotics. I've talked about it before. We're going to put all of these segments and we're going to put it in a vault of knowledge, because if you go in and just go through that first conversation that was supposed to be just a 20-minute conversation with Michael Steiner, it's now turned out to be, I think we've already done about 4 hours of content, which is invaluable. And so I learn every single day. I learn from people I speak with. I learn from the readers, the listeners, and the people that put comments on. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about learning. It's about educating yourself, bettering yourself, etc. And one thing I must say: do not sort of compress that creativity in your mind. If you have an idea, go and find somebody who'll listen. Because you know what? You might make $1 million. I missed out on mine. But anyway, next time maybe. But till the next time, like I always say to my listeners and my viewers and my readers, be safe out there. Go and have some fun, but make some money, because it's business class news. And, I'll see you the next time we're on. Bye-bye.